Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. This month's theme is One More Day, tribute to Recovery Month and World Suicide Day. Around 800,000 people complete suicide each year. 107,000 had drug overdose death in the United States during 2021, an increase nearly 15%. I know the numbers are not all in, but one of the quotes that kind of speaks to me, especially during my hardest times, was from Juliette Lewis. She says, "The bravest things I ever did was continuing my life when I wanted to die." Today we have a new guest. His name is Brad Otto. I am so excited to have him on. Thank you, Brad. Just joining us on the discussion, being part of just the collective conversation on all these kind of subjects.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
No problem. I always have a disclaimer for those in the United States. Obviously, I have listeners around the world. I do encourage you to find what resources are available for you. But if you are in the United States, 988 is a new suicide crisis lifeline. But at the same time, I always say I don't like reinventing the wheel. If faith-based is something that helped you, then do it. I encourage it. I always say, Brad, people say it better than I do, and that's totally fine. Alice Walker said it this way: the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. What comes to mind when you hear this quote?
Oh my gosh. I go back to when I was at the lowest point in my mental health journey, when I'm sitting in a mental health hospital for the very first time, and I feel completely helpless. And thought that, I had no power whatsoever to overcome what was happening. No power over my life. I was always a control person, and I had no control in that instance. And I didn't think I had any. She's right. I did not think I had any power in that moment, and I gave it up in those moments. And that was when I was at the lowest point.
Yeah, one thing I want to say to those listening is that even the fact that going to a hospital, being admitted inpatient, I understand. I experienced that myself. One thing that we don't realize is we made a choice to go. We made a choice to get help. At the very least, it doesn't seem very apparent at the time, but it's still a choice nonetheless. Brad, I always like my new guests to kind of have a moment to kind of share what brought them here. Why is this stuff important? Why do you like just a little bit about yourself to those who are listening? Just give me a little moment to share your story, anything that you feel comfortable sharing.
Sure. So I am a Lutheran pastor. I've been a Lutheran pastor for 17 years, and married to my wife, Stacy, for 17 years as well. 2 kids. My daughter is 12 and my son is 7. And what brought me here is because mental health is important to me, because I went through it just about 2 years ago myself. I kept ignoring the signs. I kept denying that it was happening to me until it was too late, until my wife said, "You need to go get help." And so I went and got help, and came back and really started to walk a path of healing, and really try to get my life back on track. And I wrote about it in my upcoming book. It's my first book. It's coming out here in about a month. It's called Finding Myself Again, and it's about my journey through that mental illness, through finding inner peace again, and how I did that, and what led me to find my inner peace again, and how I found healing in those moments. And so it has been a topic that is important to me. As a pastor, the church does not talk about it enough.
Oh yeah.
I think that mental wellness is also connected to spiritual wellness in some way, regardless of your spirituality, right? I mean, regardless of your faith, regardless of what you do, it is a faith journey, and it is part of your story. And I've tried to weave the two together in everything that I've done, and to bring awareness to the church to say, we have, especially coming out of COVID, we have pastors who are struggling. They were tossed into a situation that they had no training in whatsoever. And a lot of churches closed. They had a lot of pressure from the outside, from the inside. And we have a huge mass quitting of pastors because of mental health issues, burnt out. And so we need to bring awareness to that. So that's why this topic is really important to me.
I you hit a lot of points for me, because I never, for me, being a church leader myself and just helping pastor I'm going to church with, I understand just seeing the pressures. One time I had a pastor who was on FMLA leave, so I was in charge of everything at one point. Yeah, and I understand, because it's very complicated. A lot of people don't understand. Someone's good news is someone's bad news. People forget that. So someone beats cancer or is in remission, and they're like, yay, amen. But at the same time, someone, if you're not careful enough, who's struggled, who just lost someone, is in the congregation. Yes. And it gets very tricky, because I even see it with after COVID. My best friend and locally is a pastor, and I just remember he's young, and I can imagine all the stress and the kind of tradition, and a lot of times we ask the question, are we just trying to maintain our faith or we're trying to and a lot of times we don't even ask the question why. For me, obviously, with Revive Ministry is not proselytizing. I do treat it like a medical missionary of continuing the discussion. It does get tricky when people. But I do, like I said in the beginning, I do, if faith-based has helped, I do encourage you to find and pursue that. But I also like that you brought up a topic that doesn't get talked enough about pastors being overwhelmed by the change of climate when it comes to mental health. And, with pastors, a lot of times, when does it end? When is your time off? You go on the weekend, you prepare for church, and then what? Everyone needs you. And you kind of see, especially when churches started opening up, how overwhelming it was, and how different things were changing, and how people were resistant to change. And I find this topic, especially when it comes to faith-based and we think about mental health, people are like, well, they are very much connected. I do appreciate you writing that. But all those who are listening, I'll put the notes for you to find out more about the upcoming book. But anyway, when it comes to healing, I said, I don't proselytize it. It does come in various ways. Sometimes we're just busy to be busy. Right. Setting boundaries is not always a bad thing. You see that in churches, and the enabling of overstretching yourself as a church leader, and you're like, you're denying your own needs despite yourself. We're just human. That's right. We're just human, and a lot of times we forget that. And what have you in the question, healing can come various ways. What have you seen personally that helped you in your healing, and what has not?
So I think for me, What didn't help was psychiatric meds. It did not help me. I am not saying that it cannot help somebody who's listening right now.
Mm.
For me and my body and the way my body reacted to it, it did not work for me. And so I had to find ways of healing myself. And so I took the natural way. I went back. I learned meditation. Meditation was a huge factor in my healing. Meditation has been around for centuries. It's now just kind of coming anew here in the West, like this mindfulness thing, you know. But honestly, meditation has been around for thousands of years, and you can find it in any corner of the world. We've just kind of lost it here in the West for a while. So meditation helped me. I started eating right. I started all natural supplements. And so I kind of went the natural route. And you said it. I set boundaries for myself. Boundaries are hugely important for you. And it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no to people. I read a book called Essentialism, and it talked about, you know, always ask yourself, is this the best utilization of my time and my energy in this moment right now? And so I cut out a lot of stuff because I always thought I had to be busy. I always thought I had to be doing stuff because as a pastor, you know, there's always this unspoken thing that we only work once a week. But like you said, we have to be available to people 24 hours a week. And we work more than one day a week, everybody. We literally do. And I'm a yes guy. You know, if somebody asks me to do something, you know, I'm like, sure, I'll do it. And then I just started seeing this pile up. I started ignoring my family. I started ignoring, like I said, the warning signs, all this sort of stuff. So I had to set clear boundaries for myself, and I had to cut out things that were not the best use of my time, my energy, and my resources. And so those were the things that I think helped me heal the most. That and finding a way to forgive myself, that it was not my fault, that I was not a broken person, that this was a part of me, but it did not have to define me. So I had to find a way to forgive myself and love myself again, just in a new way. And that took some deep work. It is a process. Does not happen overnight. Meditation, I always tell people when I teach them meditation, I said, this does not happen overnight. You are not going to be an instant meditator overnight, because you are retraining your brain. It's just like any other muscle in our body. You can't expect to go into the gym and come out ripped looking like The Rock after one time, right? So it's a process, and it took me a good year to get that way. So meditation, supplements, eating right, exercising more. I did not exercise. I now go for daily walks. That helped me. And then finding a way to forgive myself and love myself again. Those were all huge for me.
I love what you're mentioning, the holistic view when it comes to mental health and healing. When it comes to our healing, it's different. Like I said before, it comes in various ways, and medication is not everything. I say this even when I work in the mental health field. I know that that's not it. That's not everything. A lot of times it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, and there's no fault against it. You know, everyone's circumstance is different. But the reason why we care about this topic, and that's how I've been trying to, you know, I think stigma a lot of times is just, it's cultural too. You know, if you look at even if you look at people who are, you know, when I do Bible study or something, they not rebuke, but they question firmly, I would say.
Yeah.
The thing is, a lot of times it's you know, there's sometimes you read it, you know, one way, and you know, it's old old staple of the way you see God is how you will treat yourself and others. So if you see God as a vengeful, angry, or distant, you kind of treat people. It's not always a perfect science, but it is something that I've kind of gauged when I talk to some people who are close to me. But
Yeah.
when it comes to what you're talking, health, I feel a lot of times people don't realize that going out for a walk, at the very least, if you put boundaries, you can actually think what's a priority. We don't have time to think what a priority is when we're just like impulsively saying yes. Or
Exactly.
yeah, so and I feel the tradition that has been, work hard, like this busyness, this overwhelming busyness to prove one's value, has diminishes our presentness with each other. And I feel, for me at least, I whenever I make my tea or whatever, I sometimes, even at the hardest moment, I will just concentrate on each step of making my tea. I have like this process to slow myself down, because I do my best work when I'm able to slow down. I think many of us do, but we don't really. We look at the productivity, not the process.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of times in these cases, many times resources and support can be hard. One of the biggest resources that are limited in church setting just because is people's time, people being there to help you.
Yes.
You can have all the equipment you need, you can have all that, but no one shows up, or it's just people have lives. So in regards to mental health, is the same thing.
Yeah.
My wife has this book, in untranslatable words in other countries. And this is in Hindi. It says Jugad, ensuring that things happen even with the minimal resources. I find it unique that they have a word that defines that.
I love that. Yeah, that is awesome.
So what helped you during the journey, when you have all the barriers and scarcity, of support, and what did not, those times when you felt it was low?
Yeah. Community is so important. And for a lot of people who suffer with mental illness, community is something that they lack. And for me, it was community that helped. I had a staff that picked up the pieces for me, that covered for me when I needed it. I had a family. I had friends who were here for my wife and for my kids when I could not be. And so that was huge for me. Now, in terms of scarcity, I must say it took me probably 2 days of being on the phone trying to find a psychiatrist. Once I was out, one that would take my insurance, and two that I couldn't even get in to see this side of the century. And so that did not help, by the way, my anxiety whatsoever. It was like back and forth. And then when I thought I found one, it was like, oh, well, we don't take that type of insurance. So it was just like, the lack of, we have a problem in the United States with a lack of resources. If I have a heart problem, right, and I'm at my doctor, my general practitioner doctor, he sends me to a cardiologist, right? Sometimes in the mental health world, there's not a map. It feels like there's not a map. Because I say path to mental health, but a path assumes that there's a map. Sometimes there's no map, and it's hard to navigate that map, especially if you're trying to do it yourself. And that was huge. And I'll tell you right now, the insurance company did not help whatsoever. They actually made it more confusing for me along the way. But the community that was around me, the people that were around me, my coworkers, they were the ones that got me through it. And I read a statistic at some point. It was like, you're 30% more likely to overcome a mental illness if you have a supportive community around you. That's how important it is to have that support system on your journey. And for some people, that's a barrier because they don't have that,
Yeah.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
but it's extremely important.
Yeah. Yeah. And when it comes to the community, it's one thing. We're not islands, some people are introverts, some people are extroverts, but at the same time we need each other. And I
Right.
feel, um when it comes to, unfortunately, when it comes to mental health and resources, it is limited. That's why, in the sense that wherever you are, it's hard to navigate. And I'm saying this not to pass blame, or there's a scarcity in a lot of avenues when it comes to healthcare field. You want dental dental stuff done. Dental, a lot of times there's shortages, and
Yeah.
for me, that's where knowing and taking those times with your barriers to kind of say what does work. We still, in the beginning, I'm like, don't reinvent the wheel. There's community, people that are there. Mental health is not a magic pill. There's no magic pill to help it. Some things may help you through some hard times, but every day is not a crisis situation. We talk.
Absolutely.
There. What One of the biggest things when I'm working with my clients, I ask them is, what's your hobby? Nowadays, with the way people, especially even with COVID, you imagine you would be like, no, they don't feel that they have a hobby or deserve one. It's kind of alarming how many times, whenever I'm
Mm,
working with clients, and I ask them, "Do you have a hobby?" Like, what? I'm allowed to have a
have a
hobby?
hobby.
I think, and it's funny because you would think, that would be something that, with all the time spent, maybe trying to get resources, there might be. But what you notice is that, there might be a guitar on the side with dust on it, not really restrung, or not. And for me, that in itself is a resource that people don't realize when it comes to hobbies, connecting with others.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes, and unfortunately, I think a good, strong community and faith-based communities can do a good job of that. I say can,
They can.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
And there's some that can't.
yeah, exactly.
Because I believe me, I've met plenty of people who have been hurt by a faith community
Mm,
before as well, which doesn't speak well to faith communities. I mean, it just means we have work to do out there,
mm,
folks. But yes, a faith community can help. Um, but just good, supportive people around you.
yeah,
It doesn't even have to be a faith community.
yeah, it
Just
doesn't.
whatever community you have.
Yeah, utilize it. And the thing is, there's not one person, not one pastor has all the answers. I will say
No,
that right now. A
no.
lot of times, pedestal, kind of corrodes the community that's already there.
Yes.
There's not a top down, especially, it's just people. Each person that you see, whether you're in church or in AA or whatever you're at, those people, unfortunately, may be going through a lot, and building the healthy, positive support around you. It's not going to be perfect. You said it before. If I just pick up a soccer ball, I'm going to be like Messi. It's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it makes sense. But a lot of times we don't put enough time or value in our mental health. We're like, well, I should get this over with in a few days, a week, I'll be done. But if this problem's been setting into you for years, logically, rationally, it doesn't make sense that it would. It's a process of healing that is the healing itself. And like, when you have a community, you can share. And the beautiful thing is, what you learned, what I learned, whatever, can be passed on. May help someone, may not. The service of it also is a good thing. I've seen volunteerism, being active in community, especially when you're doing a little bit better, can be something of a good reminder of where you were, and kind of ways to help your own community that you're already
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any pivotal milestones that or lessons that help propel you to where you are today? We talked a lot of them, of little ones, but anything that stands out to you want to share as we wrap up?
I think for me, a milestone for me that helped propel me forward was it was a reminder from my wife. We had taken a trip to Washington D.C.
Mm-hmm.
and I was still kind of in the middle of just getting off of medications and all of that sort of stuff. So I was kind of detoxing at that moment, and um, just absolutely broke down at the dinner table one night. And I'd never done that before in my life. And I said to her, I said, I'm tired of being this way. And she said, but look how far you've come.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, look at the steps you have taken.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, that was a pivotal moment, because no matter how small a step forward you take, it's still a step forward. And a lot of times we want to take these giant leaps. And when it comes to working through and healing through these things, sometimes it's just not possible. And to just realize and to celebrate those small wins, right? To celebrate the small wins and to not take them lightly. And that was a huge pivotal lesson and moment for me, and right in the middle of my healing, that really kind of changed the way I looked at my journey of healing, to realize, yeah, you know what? it was 4 months ago, I was still in a mental hospital, right? Look where I am now. I'm on a vacation with my wife in Washington, D.C. That's huge, you know? So celebrate the small wins, and just remember, just the small step forward is still a step in the right direction. And it may not seem like a lot, but a lot of small steps add up really quickly.
And they do. And I feel when we're able to say no a little bit more often, and we're able to say, you know what, I need time, I'm not doing well, but investing in yourself, saying you start remembering that you're not valued because you got it, you're perfect, you're valued by who you are, you're valued, and you start piecing together that all these other fluff is just fluff. At the end of the day, you are, I'm Robert, you're Brad. That's the basic model. And the sometimes we add all these, I have this title, I've done this. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, when you're in the hospital, when you're struggling, you look back and you're reminded of those small steps. Sometimes it's some small steps forward and a few back.
Yeah.
Maybe the best thing you could do is get out of bed. That's it.
Yeah.
Or like we said in the beginning, when you went to the mental hospital, you felt helpless. But at that point, you made a choice to get help. Yeah, and that's a point that people don't. A lot of times, 800,000 we mentioned in the beginning. 800,000 are not here each year. 800,000 around the world. I feel that if you're still here listening, that's a victory in itself. You're struggling, get the help, find the help that's there.
That's right.
Any final thoughts you want to share with those? I'm going to put the information about your book,
sure,
on the notes. Anything else?
Thank you. And no, I would just say, you're not alone. There are people who are there for you. There are people who have gone through this for you, and have gone through it, just like you have. And so, look, it may be a part of you, but it doesn't have to define your entire life. Love yourself for who you are. I have a saying that I learned, and that is, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at begin to change. And that was helpful for me as I came through the healing process.
We mentioned the community. A lot of communities have home. When you're in a home, a safe home, accountability is not a bad word. Wanting to be better is not a bad word.
Right.
It feels, and at the same time, those little steps will seem bigger when you start valuing where you're going.
Yeah.
It's not where you're at. So I want to say with thank you again, Brad, for
Sure. Thank you.
being
Thank you
here.
for having me.
Revive Ministries, I just want to remind those listening, go to the website, reviveministriesfl.com, where we have YouTube and we have Facebook, but to find most of our content and where to get linked to is our website. This is goodbye from Revive Ministries Podcast, leaving with this last quote. It's from F. Scott Fitzgerald. And he said, never confuse a single defeat with a final defeat.
Mm.